major themes. And for this one, the first one was the court processes that were dominated by patriarchal control. And this was evident in a number of different things. And the first was the repeated court appearances. That was the most common experience that my participants had. And the reasons for the repeated court appearances were typically paperwork misfiled by the abuser, or the abuser getting new lawyers, or typically the repeated court appearances were not due to anything on the survivor's part. There was always some extenuating circumstance as to why they felt it necessary to keep coming back to court. And this obviously, just continually perpetuates re-traumatization for the participants. And then the next sub-theme was condescension and re-traumatization. This was evident all throughout. The women were mocked if they showed emotion by their abusers, and admonished for showing emotion by the judges and judicial court personnel. And so that they internalized the trauma, and it just caused deeper, long-lasting effects of trauma for them. And then the pressurized decision-making. Some of that was displayed in some of the narratives in these monologues, that the participants described it in varying ways. Sometimes they would just say, well, I was confused, or I felt pressured, disoriented, and cloudy haze, that they would just get to where that sense of, I just need to get out of here. So what is going to help me get out of here? And then so they made decisions based on that. Maybe it was custody orders that they later regretted, or walking away from child support, which they later regretted, whatever it was. But those decisions were made from a hegemonic experience in a courtroom. The next sub-theme are the systemic devaluations and lack of safety. And this manifested itself in terms of either the outright denial of obtaining restraining orders. That was true for many of the participants, and several of them had, really strong supporting documents that would legitimate the issuing of a restraining order. One in particular, she had photos of cuts on her face and documentation, a police report, but when the judge reviewed her paperwork, they didn't arrest, the police, when they filed the report, they didn't arrest the abuser. And so he felt that, well, she either must have exaggerated it or falsified it, so he didn't give her the restraining order. So that left the participants feeling like their safety had no value in the eyes of the court. And then under the next sub-theme, were the participants, their well-being being discounted. Again, they felt that while they were in the courtroom, the well-being of the abusers was actually paramount, and their well-being was secondary, and it made them feel that they had no value. And then lastly, for those participants that were successful in obtaining restraining orders, there was a real problem with a lack of enforcement. And again, you heard some of that in the narratives here. They would either the abusers would show up and then they leave, and then the police come like, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. Or even in the court, they would bring documentation showing that they have threatening messages or this or that or whatever, and the court just discounts them as, oh, you're overreacting, just try to co-parent peacefully, etc. The next sub-theme is the navigation of support and alliances. The participants had a lot of mixed experiences when it came to social workers and DCFS. Some participants had really strong positive experiences and felt that the social workers were really sympathetic and really listening to them and really working for their best interest, while others, not so much. The social workers, they felt, were judgmental and demeaning. And in one extreme case, a participant named Monroe, her husband was beating her up, called 911, the police come, he gets arrested, DCFS shows up, takes her children away from her. Because so in her mind, and she lost her children for 9 months, took her 9 months to get her children back. And so in her mind, she was thinking, well, I guess I should just keep my mouth shut, because having her children taken away was worse than the beating itself. And then others, in terms of advocacy, the participants, over half of my participants didn't even know that advocacy was available to them in the courthouses or in outside resources. And those that were aware, there were some that accessed them. They would either go to the DASH office to help with paperwork, and there were a couple participants that had advocates join them in the courtroom. But they actually said that that made them more nervous because of the limitations, that the advocates cannot speak on their behalf or help them really in any tangible way in the courtroom. And so they kind of felt like they were responsible for this person. It would have just been better off if they weren't there. And then lastly, these limitations in not just the advocacy, but in general, just caused them extreme anxiety. And the last subcategory are the structural inconsistencies and failures. This was evident for 100% of my participants. They all said that they felt the system failed them in one way or another, some more severe than others. And they all expressed a need, again, you heard this here, they all expressed a need for some kind of changes in the way police and judicial officers are trained. They recognize that training does take place. They're not under the idea that training is just being ignored. But whatever that training is, it's not working, at least not for them. And in terms of the very few positives, there were 2 participants that felt they had really sympathetic judges. So that was a positive. And then one participant, her case, she was in criminal and family court, but then the family court case got moved to children's court. And then she said that was a completely different experience. She felt that in criminal court, they really saw him for who he was, and she felt supported. She felt they really had the children at the core best, that was they wanted the best for the children. And then, but conversely, there was another participant who wanted her case to go to children's court, but it was denied, and she remained in family court and had to endure 50-50 custody. Okay, so in terms of kind of bringing this all to what does all this mean and whatnot, I think that the experiences of the participants in this research study, you can see that the court system is just embedded with hegemonic masculinity and some neoliberal policies, economic policies that completely block their access to justice and completely demean them and operate on a power, control, and domination coercive apparatus. The impressive environment expressed by the narratives in this study, I think, support the use of an anti-carceral feminist theoretical framework. These women did what they have been taught to do or told to do: go to the police, file a restraining order, go to court. And they align themselves with this justice system that they believe, oh, they're going to help me, but yet the system is acting as it's just another form of abuse. The next major theme were the long-term effects of court experiences, and for many of the participants, they suffered ongoing physical issues. Some were high blood pressure or migraines, but for others, there was more serious issues, such as the high blood pressure and heart attack of one participant, Jane, who mentioned having issues overeating. She ultimately developed type 2 diabetes. There was another participant that was exact opposite. She couldn't eat, and so in 4 months' time, she lost 50 pounds. So there were some really serious health implications, chronic pain, etc. And these conditions impact their daily lives. In terms of emotional and psychological effects, all of the participants express suffering from some kind of disorder, whether it's anxiety, depression, PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder. They all express that they feel that in their everyday lives, whether they're in court or not. And they feel that, or they express that their experiences, they were already traumatized to begin with, but the experiences in court did exacerbate that trauma. It's not just, yeah, I'm traumatized because I was abused. I'm traumatized because I was abused and then went to court and got abused again. And in terms of negative economic impact, there's a number of different factors here. The repeated court dates make it really difficult to, if they're all caring for children. So you've got to, hire a babysitter, or if you are working, you have to take off work to keep going back to court. Or if you're not working, it makes it very difficult to get a job because you're not a reliable employee. And some of the participants most of the participants had no child support whatsoever. And that was either because a child support order was never given, or one was given and the abusers don't comply with it. And the survivors were faced with, well, do I want to go to court again to handle this? And they say no. They're like, you know what, I will just deal with it on my own. The participants, 14 of the 18 are not able to work and rely on public assistance to get by. And so they'd rather just go that route than to go back to court and deal with being traumatized yet again. And then there were several custody and visitation schedules that were extremely oppressive for the survivors. Again, the court viewed, in their experiences, the court viewed the abusers' employment and time to be paramount, and the survivors' employment and time to be secondary. So schedules were revolving around what's convenient for you over here. And